Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. So glad you can be here. As you can see on the screen, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Your name, where you're from, and Dayenu Circle, congregation, or other group affiliation. We'll get started in just a minute. Welcome, Anya. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome, Michael. Welcome, Lois, Malcolm, Brian, Carolyn. Hi, David. Hi, Iris, Brian. Wow, this is so great. It's so nice to see everybody here. So glad you could join us tonight. I'm Muriel, Dayenu's Deputy Organizing Director. If you're just joining us right now and you haven't already, please join the introductions in the chat. You can see on the screen, name, where you're from, congregation or other circle affiliation or group affiliation. You'll be hearing more from me tonight, but to get us warmed up, we're going to be treated to some live music from Yoni Batat, an instrumentalist musician who draws from both Mizrahi and Ashkenazi music traditions. We are so blessed to be nourished by his music tonight. Yoni, take it away.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here. I'm going to share with you an Iraqi piyut, a liturgical poem with some beautiful, beautiful imagery about the natural world and all the treats that we can, that we're so lucky to have from it. And in the chat, someone will share the lyrics so you can see the translation on the second page. And this is called Aziranen. It's an Iraqi piyut, and I'll be playing it on the oud, which is a Middle Eastern lute. Aziranen عيتها يعاري لفني لا دير ديري يا إرزميروت وشيريم يا شير حداش يتبقر الحي تسورينو وشمو يتقاداش يتبقر الحي تسورينو وشمو يتقاداش יצורנו ושמו יתקדש יתברל חי צורנו ושמו יתקדש חזקו לבבות שובבות שמחו בנים עם האבות שמחו בנות עם האימהות כה נזכה לשנים רבות אשיר שיר חדש יתברל חי צורנו ושמו יתקדש יתברל חי צורנו ושמו יתקדש יתברל חי צורנו ושמו יתקדש יתברל חי צורנו ושמו יתקדש. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoni. Can we show Yoni some appreciation? You can appreciate in the chat or have some sparkle fingers. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was very nourishing. Love to start off a campaign call with some music to nourish the soul. If you joined us while Yoni was playing, that was Yoni Patat opening our campaign call tonight with some music to feed the soul and inspire us for the work ahead. And we'll share one more time a link in the chat if you would like to follow Yoni on social media and see some of his work, or give some of his work a listen, rather. In about 45 minutes, we're going to wrap this call up with one more opportunity to hear music from Yoni, followed by optional breakouts for those who would like to learn more. If this is your first call with Dayenu, welcome. We're so glad you made it here. One of those breakout groups at the end of the call is for you, and that'll be a chance to learn a little bit more about the basics of who we are and what we do. A few accessibility notes for tonight's program. If you would like to access closed captioning, click on the button at the bottom of your screen, and that should say captions, and then you can select show captions. And if you run into any tech problems, feel free to ask for help by sending a chat to the hosts. Tonight, we're gathered to share some updates and invite you all into the next part of A Time to Build, Climate, Jobs, and Justice for All, Dayenu's campaign to bring home federal funds for climate action. First, I'm honored to introduce Dayenu's founder and CEO, Rabbi Jenny Rosen, to offer an opening kavanah.
Thanks, Muriel. Good evening. It is so good to be together with all of you. As many of you know, we launched our campaign, A Time to Build, Climate, Jobs, and Justice, during Sukkot on October 5th, and many of you were there. And Sukkot feels like a lifetime ago. Needless to say, a lot has happened since then. And these past months have been devastating. It's been a time of real heartbreak and pain. And it can feel hard to hold so much communal and, for many of us, personal anguish. And it can be hard to hold multiple crises. And yet, that is exactly what so many of us have been doing, holding the multiplicity of ways in which our world is in pain, and working to make our world more whole, to build the world we so desperately need. We name the campaign A Time to Build, Climate, Jobs, and Justice from a line in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, which we also happen to read on Sukkot. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing. We've done many of these things these past months, and we return again and again to this being a critical time for building a future, a world that is just and livable and sustainable for all people for generations to come, building on the incredible resources of the Inflation Reduction Act and making them manifest, really bringing them to life in communities across the nation, building the clean energy future that we need. Because as we know all too well, the time we have in which it will be possible to avert the worst of climate impacts, that narrow window of time is closing. In this week's Torah portion, Truma, we recall our ancestors' creation of the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the portable sanctuary we built and carried with us when we were journeying in the desert. We were coming out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim, the narrow place. And God says, V'asuli mikdash v'shulchanti b'tocham, make for me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Many commentators have actually pointed out that the language of building the Mishkan mirrors the language of creation. Only this time, it's us doing the creating. And this is really our first great collaborative act that we do together after crossing the Red Sea. But interestingly, the name of the Torah portion that recounts all of this, it's not asu, make, or banu, build. The name of our portion is truma, gifts. And that's because God gives very specific instructions on how to build this holy vessel. God says, tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves them. God instructs that each person should bring gifts to the endeavor of building the Mishkan. The medieval commentator Rashbam points out that the use of the word truma, or gift, implies that this is something each person is to set aside from their own belongings, They don't need to go hunt for it. They're being told they already have it. They already have what they need. All they have to do is offer it up, bring it to the great collective project that is building the Mishkan. We are all called to build a new world together. And every single one of us on this call, and all of our friends and family members and neighbors and community members, each has gifts to bring to this work. We don't need to go searching for those gifts. We each have them. And the climate movement needs all of them. We need writers and artists. We need people who love a good spreadsheet and people who are energized by public speaking. We need people who like to organize folks in the street, and we need people who like to make the sandwiches. We need everyone. Ecclesiastes tells us that there is a time for everything. And this is the time for building. And Parashat Truma, this week's Torah portion, reminds us that we have the gifts we need to create that different future. We have them. So let's join together in this hard and holy work, because the time is now.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I love that teaching. And it is such a treat to be on this call tonight with so many of you and so many of your gifts. Over a year ago, after decades of mounting public pressure and a sustained 18-month campaign that included many of you, Congress passed the first piece of meaningful climate legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a down payment on a just and livable future. That major win ushered in a new era, as Jenny spoke, a time to build. Now, our collective task is to ensure that these investments in climate, jobs, and justice reach all communities, especially those that need them the most, without delay. We launched this campaign on October 5th. Some of you were on that call. Since then, a lot has happened. Our communities have been overwhelmed with grief and with horror. So we paused and we took a moment to check in on our people and adjust our approach. Originally, we had envisioned big public-facing actions like the Hear the Call actions that Dayenu leaders organized to win these federal investments in the first place, a photo of which you can see on the screen. But it became clear that we needed something smaller and more community-based for this moment. So instead, we asked Dayenu circles and leaders to host postcarding stations during community Hanukkah gatherings, where folks could learn about the campaign and write to their governor, asking them to prioritize funding for climate, jobs, and justice without delay, since a lot of decisions about these federal funds where the money goes, how effectively, to whom, and how fast are all made at the state level. Dalia will share a little bit more about that in a moment. And amazingly, you all delivered. 60 Dayenu circles and communities raised their hands to do just this, reaching over 4,000 people with our campaign and writing thousands of postcards to governors in 18 states. I want to share just a few images of these inspiring events. Here we have Chicago, where over 100 people gathered. Some did organize standalone events where state legislators were in attendance in Chicago, in New York, in Vermont, and in Michigan. And in Michigan, legislators in attendance shared it was the first time that someone had thanked them for passing the recent historic statewide climate bill that made use of these funds. And as we know, it's so important to thank our legislators when they do vote for climate bills. This was our most widely adopted tactic yet. Here we have Temple Road of Shalom in Falls Church, Virginia, gatherings in Waltham, Massachusetts, and in Brooklyn, New York. We have folks delivering their postcards in Los Angeles and an amazing Lorax cutout in Berkeley, California. Special shout out also to our circles in New Jersey, who had an amazing amount of local press coverage about their gatherings, in part due to this awesome recycled menorah that you can see here. We had new synagogues, communities, and Hillels taking action with Dayenu for the first time, and more photos than I could possibly share here. If you want to check them out, go to dayenu.org/time-to-build, and you can see some of these additional amazing photos from these 60 events that happened across the country over the course of Hanukkah. You all showed us the power and the potential of postcarding in our communities. So this spring, we're going to go big with this pocket-sized tactic, making sure that our elected officials and our communities bring home these critical funds for climate jobs and justice. I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague, Dalia Rockowitz, who always has her finger on the pulse of where our policymakers are at and where we can most strategically put our energy, to share why we think it's strategic to reach out to governors and state-level energy offices and why we need to do it now. Over to you, Dalia.
Thanks, Muriel. Since it's been several months since we've all been together, and for some of you, this may be the first that you're hearing about the A Time to Build campaign, let me start by explaining the campaign goals and strategy. As Muriel shared, thanks to people power, dogged organizing, and mass mobilizing from a broad coalition that included Jewish climate activists and Dayenu leaders, Americans now have over $370 billion to pay for clean energy, clean transportation, regenerative agriculture, building electrification, and so much more. The passage of the Inflation Reduction Act 18 months ago, 18, it's a good sign, right, to be having this call tonight, in addition to 2 other federal laws, represented the starting point for this new era that we keep referring to, a rapid transition to an economy and a society that's run on clean, renewable energy. But it's up to us to call on policymakers to ensure that these funds deliver the maximum benefits. That means millions of family-sustaining jobs, billions of dollars flowing to underserved communities, and gigawatts of renewable energy to power the clean energy future. If we succeed, we will not only help realize these benefits, but lay the groundwork for more ambitious climate action at the scale that science and justice demand. So here are our campaign goals, what we hope to achieve by the summer. This fall, we focused on the first 2 goals. We advocated to Congress to protect climate legislation from rollbacks and pass a clean federal budget without delay. And I want to acknowledge that, unfortunately, that remains unresolved. Then, as Muriel shared, we turned our focus to our second goal. We focused on state officials to ensure that climate investments reach every community without delay, and especially the communities on the front lines of poverty, racism, and pollution. This spring, we're doubling down on our second goal, ensuring that our elected officials deliver. And we're infusing it with creativity and Jewish spirit to achieve our third goal. To be clear, we are not losing sight of our first goal. ensuring that we are fully engaged in the federal funding fight. And we'll be sure to let you know if there's an urgent action item that you should take. But I also want to acknowledge, sitting here in Washington, D.C., that the debate is largely happening behind closed doors and hinges on a broader set of issues than just climate. So our ability to sway the outcome solely on the issue of climate is fairly limited. But we can have a very real impact at this moment closer to the ground, where the money is actually being spent. That's why we're postcarding our state officials this spring. Hang tight for the ins and outs of this tactic. Muriel has definitely got you covered, including who to write to and what we're asking for. But let me flag what's new. We'll be supporting you to deliver your postcards in person to your state officials. And we'll be doing that with climate-themed Mishloach Manot, the baskets of food and drink we traditionally deliver as gifts to friends and family on the Purim holiday. So let me walk you through the strategy that you see on your screen. At the top, we are setting up postcarding stations between now and Purim. At those postcarding stations, we educate our community about the benefits of climate action, things like clean air and water, good jobs and economic development, and ultimately a livable future. Then, moving clockwise, by collecting a really truly impressive number of postcards, we can keep the pressure on our state officials to go after the money, applying for funds from the federal government and spending them equitably and effectively. And then closing out that circle, we'll be planning in-person deliveries with creative Jewishly rooted visuals and telling the story through photo and video and words. So not only will we know that our decision makers got the message, we'll be able to reach a wider audience, thereby growing our movement for bold climate action. Now, I told you that I would get back to that third goal, educating the American public, especially the American Jewish community, about the benefits of climate action so they feel called to show up at the ballot box and demand more ambitious climate legislation. Now, I know that the upcoming election is probably on your mind because I can say it is definitely on my mind. So let me leave you with two statistics from the leading climate communication institutes to inspire action. The first number is 63%. That's if you take the first chart and add those two highlighted lines together. This is the percentage of Americans who said that they've heard little to nothing about the Inflation Reduction Act, let alone what it means for climate action and a just and livable future. That's not good. We got to do better. But here's the exciting part and the second statistic, which is if you add in the 4.2 in that second table, if you add those two lines together, 71%. So these researchers found that after reading a brief description about the Inflation Reduction Act, a large majority of registered voters, in fact, over 70%, said that they supported this legislation. So here's how I understand these numbers. Right now, our friends and our family and our neighbors are in the dark. But by urging our elected officials at every level of government to ensure that federal climate funds deliver and telling the story, those same friends and family and neighbors will literally be able to see themselves in a clean energy future. And we will make our vision so compelling that they will be inspired to join us in demanding for bold systemic climate action. In other words, by educating our communities about current federal climate legislation and inspiring them with our vision for a just and livable future, they are going to want more. And collectively, we can convince Americans to elect climate champions this fall to make sure that the investments in the Inflation Reduction Act really are just the starting point, the floor, and not the ceiling for future climate action. I'm now going to hand it over to Muriel, who will walk you through how to get involved this spring. Over to you, Muriel.
Thank you, Dahlia. So I'm curious, as we start to lay out how we're thinking about this, how many postcards you think you could organize your community to write? 25, 50, 100, 250? Some of you will have done this already during Hanukkah. And some of you, this is the first time that you're hearing this ask or that you'll be raising your hand to do this. You can ask your community to write postcards on Purim or any time before then, and then deliver them to your governors and state energy offices during Purim as traditional Mishloach Manot Purim gift baskets. To reiterate what Dahlia shared, if we do it right, this tactic accomplishes 3 key goals all at once. By setting up postcarding stations, we educate our community about the benefits of climate action. By collecting a substantial number of postcards, we keep up the pressure on those state officials. And by planning a creative and Jewishly rooted in-person delivery, we ensure that our decision makers are getting the message and that we're inspiring others to join us. We've identified 2 areas where we can make a difference this spring, so we're asking you all to organize your communities to write postcards to 2 targets, your governors and to your state energy offices. First, we're continuing to call on our governors to apply for an equitably and effectively utilized federal funds. Additional funds are coming online every week, and we're approaching a big deadline to apply for funds. States have until April 1st to apply for funds to implement their climate action. Purim is March 23rd through 24th this year, so it's a perfect time to push our governors to claim those dollars and spend them wisely. Second, if folks want to write more than 1 postcard, which we heard last time they did, we're encouraging that second postcard to go to your state energy offices, calling for equitable distribution of home energy rebates, which states are working out the details for, so they'll be available next year. This is a little wonky, but basically the Inflation Reduction Act includes nearly $9 billion in energy rebates to retrofit and electrify homes. And this money is allocated to states, and state energy offices are the ones writing the rules for how this money is distributed to consumers. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of different ways this money can get distributed. Some of it is equitable and some of it exacerbates inequalities. And we really want everyone to be able to electrify and for these funds to reach frontline communities that need them most. For both governors and state energy offices, we'll be providing some suggestions and directions for several fun and creative Purim-related activities and crafts that you can do while collecting the postcards and later utilize when you're delivering these postcards. And as we saw over Hanukkah, you have a wealth of great ideas to bring to this campaign. We've got some as well, but there's really no limit to how creative and on Purim, how silly you can get with this. Once you've collected these postcards in your community, it'll be time to deliver them. And Purim is a holiday of joy and celebration and dress up and playfulness. So that's the perfect tone, really, for an in-person delivery to a governor's office or a state energy office, where we want the delivery to be joyful and really highlight for the governor's staff and the state energy office staff that climate action can be joyful and is full of potential. We're going to share a link now in the chat for when you are ready to go ahead and order these postcards for your community to write together this spring. And if you're hearing this and you're like, actually, no, I want 250 postcards, I want to order them now, you can fill that out right now. And if you're thinking, actually, I'm not sure when, but I think I want to do it, you can also fill it out right now. We'll just ask, are you ready to order your postcards? And you can say, not yet, but let us know you're thinking about it. And that'll help us get you the info you need so that when you are ready, you have everything you need to make it happen. If you've organized with us before, can I actually get a little like sparkle fingers again, like on screen? If you've organized with us before on anything, whether it was postcarding or something else, amazing. I see you all. I know you've organized with us before. Yeah, it's great. Awesome. Well, you know that there's plenty of support to make this happen. We do not like leave you alone to pull this off. We have a toolkit that lays it all out for you, step-by-step guides, and what I would say are pretty fun office hours every week for organizers to drop by and get their questions answered, brainstorm ideas together, and get support from others doing the same thing. I look forward to seeing your beautiful faces at office hours. We are going to do them again, and I hope you'll join us. And you'll get these materials and an invite to office hours when you fill out the interest form, which again, we're sharing in the chat one more time right now. So whether you're ready to order your postcards or not, please do fill that out during this call or right after this call so we can make sure to get you all that important information. Now, while you're contemplating filling out this very important form, I am pleased to introduce you to two Dayenu Circle leaders who are going to briefly share what it looks like in their communities to organize around this campaign during Hanukkah. So first up, Mike Rublin from Temple of the Stranger, Dayenu Circle in Brooklyn, New York. Over to you, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. So appreciative being here and nice to meet most of you. I'm fairly new to Dayenu, and I'm Mike. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York. I'm with a kind of like a Havurah called Temple of the Stranger that's located in Brooklyn. And we're an experimental, inclusive, and mystical Jewish community here. While we're in Brooklyn, we do a lot of virtual programming accessible to anyone across the country. And I'm just going to be speaking about a Hanukkah event that our community put together. We actually, instead of, we had the option to table somewhere with Dayenu for these postcards, but we actually wanted to host an entire Hanukkah event on our own, which we had already started to plan, oriented around eco-spirituality. So it was just like this perfect framework because we wanted to incorporate a really tangible action. So thus, postcarding and Dayenu came into play. They provided them for us. They instructed us on them, basically held our hand throughout and just made it nice and easy and accessible. And it came to be just a really powerful part of the evening. We actually hosted it at the rabbi's home in North Brooklyn. And it was just a very joyful, musical evening, lots of music, lots of food, of course, teachings around ancestral wisdom, and a lot of prompts for reflection and interacting with other folks. We had this interactive Polaroid shoot that lined the walls, connected to string lights, a beautiful large menorah that actually resembled a tree. And as people walked in, we had some work beforehand on using recycling and reuse to make, these prompts. Like we made these dreidels, you can barely see it, but cut out with different questions to ask as you came in, kind of help you meet people. And it was just a wonderful event. So we had about 30 people, give or take one or two, did a lot of postcards at the end. We basically invited folks to learn about the Inflation Reduction Act and also signed postcards specific to what's going on in New York. There were 3 bills that the coalition wanted to see passed. And overall, it was a great turnout. Everyone had a great time. And about a week later, we delivered them in person to Hochul's New York City office. So just want to thank Dayenu again and our collaboration.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'll turn it over to Ariel Sabat, who also organized an awesome Hanukkah postcarding event.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I am in central Vermont in the Mad River Valley, and I live in a Jewish co-housing community called Living Tree Alliance. We're a co-housing community, an educational nonprofit, and a regenerative agriculture farm. And even though for the past 10 years that the community has existed, it's been super ingrained in the local fight against climate change. We host field trips and do education for local youth about the importance of small agriculture, small farms, eating locally. So we've been engaged in the fight against climate change, but never really from a political point of view. So this is our first time bringing Dayenu into our community, which was really exciting. And I was grateful, having previously organized in New York City at JTS and that Dayenu Circle, to bring Dayenu here. And we hosted our annual Hanukkah party, inviting our community members to join us, sing songs, play games, eat a lot of latkes, and also to sign postcards. It was a few struggles here and there getting things organized, but ultimately had a lot of support and it went really well. And I was very surprised at our event that the people most interested in filling out the postcards were the kids. They wanted to know, what is postcarding? This doesn't look like a regular letter. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who are you writing to and what are you writing about? And it was really special to introduce these young kids into hopefully what will be a lifelong journey of climate action and climate justice. So I'm looking forward to bringing the postcarding to our Purim event. It's kind of convenient that our community already has all these events that we have every year annually, and we can just tag on the postcarding and do that together too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing the details of your events. They were both really awesome to see the photos roll in and hear the accounts of as they were happening. As you all heard, you can use this tactic as part of a larger climate-focused event, but you can also just host a postcarding station at an event that's already happening, a Purim Carnival, a Megillah reading, an Oneg, a religious school activity. And of course, it's true. People of all ages are interested in writing a postcard or two. So I'm curious, who thinks that they can organize their community to write between 25 to 250 postcards between now and Purim? If you think you can organize your community to write at least 25, which is the smallest amount of postcards we will mail you, raise your hand or drop a star, like a little asterisk in the chat. Yeah, you can just raise your hand. If you think maybe you could get at least 25 postcards written in your community to your governor and state energy offices. Awesome. I love to see it. And remember, each person can write 2 if they're very excited to write postcards. So maybe whatever your number you're holding in your head you could double it. That is so awesome. I love to see the hands. Even if you're not sure, please go ahead and let us know you're considering it by filling out the form that we're dropping in the chat. As I mentioned earlier, it's both an interest form and, if you're ready, an order form to get those postcards sent to you. So that Savannah has just shared it in the chat. And I'm going to hand it over to Dahlia now to explain what's happening next.
Great. So like all good Zooms, we're going to end on logistics. No, I'm going to share some logistics. Then you're going to hear another amazing performance from Yoni. And then we're actually going to have some optional breakouts. So hang tight. Yoni is going to play a beautiful piece of music. We know that in these hard times, music is a bomb, and we're so grateful to have Yoni to join us to both open and close tonight's call to nourish us for the work ahead. But you will want to stay on the line. After we hear from Yoni, you'll have some options. You can stay in the main room with the amazing Maytal Gerson and Savannah Lipner. They'll be offering a Dayenu 101. So earlier in the call, if you were one of those people who were like, I'm new here, and what is a Dayenu circle and what is a campaign, this is the place for you. And even if you are a seasoned climate activist or you've been involved in Dayenu for a long time, it's a great place to come and listen and hear how we talk about our work. If you are based in the 2 of our most populous states in terms of Dayenu circles, that would be California and New York, we are going to have breakout rooms for each of you. So there will be 2 breakout rooms, California, New York, or you can stay in the main room for Dayenu 101. If you are not based in California and New York, but you're curious what's happening in those states, you are welcome to come. If you are in another state and you want to talk something state specific, that's where office hours come in. We'd love to see you next Wednesday for our first office hours. So again, hang tight. We encourage you to turn your camera on so Yoni has an audience to listen to, but don't hang up at the end. We're going to have time to transition into those breakouts, and not to worry, we will still have you on your way at around the top of the hour. So again, if you're new to Dayenu, if you live in California or New York and you want to plug into work there, if you're just curious and you want to listen in, you can find where you are going. So with that, while you are mulling your interest form, while you are turning on your camera and giving us a big smile, I will turn it back over to Yoni.
Thank you so much. Such an honor to be a part of this event and to contribute some music. This song is a nigun that I wrote. It's a wordless melody that's pretty easy. I hope you'll sing along in your little Zoom boxes. That would make me really happy.
Thank you, Yoni. let's show Yoni some love and appreciation. You can put it on gallery view and just see all of the gratitude for that music. Thank you so much. Thank you. And for those who want to get more of that music, I know I do. There is once more a link to follow Yoni's music in the chat. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We already have over 20 people who filled out the postcard order forms in the past 15 minutes. So please keep filling those out. We are well on our way to reach our campaign goals. And have a lovely night. If you're based in New York or California, or if you're curious about what's happening in those states, we're launching those breakout groups now. So you should be able to select the breakout group of your choice at the bottom of the screen. If you can't do that for any reason, go ahead and change your name on Zoom to include New York or California before your name. And we've got some folks on standby to just move you into those rooms. If you're new to Dayenu and would like a little 101, stay in the room. And I'm going to hand it over to Savannah and Maytal to facilitate in a moment. California, I'll see you in the California breakout room. And everyone else, good night. Thank you so, so much. I cannot wait to see you at office hours starting next week. Fill out that interest form to get your invite. Appreciate you all. Have a lovely evening.